Chris Lang. I can always rely on you, Chris. If you've got a question. Oh.
Remember a couple of weeks ago, the last session, where we were doing Can You Fly Through This Area? And it was the southern stub of Stansted, I think it was, that you showed.
Excellent, yes. So there seems to be a lot of mystery around TMZs. Especially, of course, Stansted. And off the top of my head, I can't think of any other TMZ in the UK. Certainly not where I fly.
Well, the Heathrow zone is a TMZ as well as a control zone.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You've
got a chart there. It should have the little half moons.
Oh yes, so it does. You know what? I've never noticed that. It's hidden. It's under the. I'm just looking at it now. It's sort of hidden under the shading of the blue.
Yeah. Now, my work's done. I'm off now. Then bye.
Well, there
So
you go.
Is it the Heathrow zone or is it the city zone as well?
I think it's just the Heathrow.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, just Heathrow zone.
Yeah. So that was part of because the tower were, and it did come from Heathrow Tower. They were a little bit loath to lose their Class A airspace, and so they put the TMZ there as well as Class B as an extra kind of level of protection, if you like, that there wouldn't be lots of random primary targets suddenly getting anywhere near Heathrow. So that was the thinking behind that.
So can you just explain for us all what on earth is a TMZ?
Okay. Does anyone want to? What do we think it might mean? Let's start there.
Somebody be brave enough. Go on.
Yeah, go on.
Otherwise, I'll have to do it.
Otherwise, Amanda will have to answer.
Yeah, or Amanda. That's right.
I'm slowly going to slide out of my chair and out of sight.
Just sort of disappear off screen. So, what is a TMZ? Go for it, Chris.
Terminal Manoeuvre Zone.
Close.
Terminal Manoeuvre Zone.
Close, but no
No prize there, I'm afraid. It's a transponder mandatory zone. So what it means is that the aircraft must be equipped with a serviceable either Mode Sierra elementary, or I mean that's where most aircraft are these days, but at least a Mode Alpha and Charlie, so some sort of altitude reporting capability as well to go in it. And we can either have one of these like we have at Heathrow that is co-located with controlled airspace. So in essence, that, as I just sort of touched on, that's kind of dissuading people who are non-transponder equipped to even try and come in. Or they can be established outside controlled airspace, as is the case with the one below the Stansted stub. So at either end of Stansted, you have control areas with a base of 1,500 feet. Below that, so technically outside controlled airspace, you've got a transponder mandatory zone between the surface and the base of controlled airspace. So anyone wanting to go through there has to have a serviceable transponder, or they can contact, if you know it's broken or they are not equipped, they can ask the controlling authority, which would either be Stansted or Farnborough North. So you can go through and be under the auspices of either Stansted or Farnborough North without a transponder. In that case, you have to be speaking. But if you have a transponder and it's fully serviceable, you can go through without speaking to anyone.
Now, Helena, do we therefore have to squawk a specific code to fly through a TMZ?
No. Well, conspicuity
So just
code. Yeah.
So in our, because of course,
Yeah, it's not.
see, we're desperately trying to make you say 7,000. We're not allowed to say it now, are you?
We're not.
You can, yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
But it's a perfectly acceptable response because it's a horrible word to say. So if someone says to you squawk conspicuity, you can respond by telling them the code you have elected to select.
Because there's often I speak to a lot of people about TMZs, and they think that they need some sort of a clearance or approval, and you try to explain to them, no, literally, as long as you've got, as you rightly say, your transponder and you've actually got it switched on with altitude reporting, you don't even need to be listening on the frequency or squawking that listening code, although it's not a bad idea, obviously, unless you're in the southern stub, or sorry, the TMZ, and it's better off talking to North Wheel because of your proximity to them. But yes, yeah, not many people realise that. They think they need clearance to pass through there.
Only if you can't fulfil the equipment requirements.
That's it.
And I mean, Amanda actually works the airspace above the TMZ. So if you see a primary, what actions do you have to take?
So if a primary contact, say if you don't have a transponder and you call up Farnborough North, which is the first point of contact.
Amanda, sorry to interrupt. Can you explain for us all, including me, what on earth is a primary contact and what's a secondary contact?
Oh, sorry. See, I've gone all air traffic. So on radar, a primary contact is non-transponding. So we just see primary contact, we've got no squawk, no mode Charlie, nothing.
You're just getting a radar rebound off of it, basically.
Yeah. So if you're secondary, we'll have a squawk as well, and preferably mode Charlie. So there can be traffic there, non-squawking, no height readout, so primary only. First point of contact will be Farnborough North. If Lars are shut, then it's a look to call Essex. But if you speak to Farnborough and you're primary only, non-squawking, they will then ring me as Stansted and say either TMZ1 or TMZ2 primary, to say there's a primary contact in either TMZ1 or TMZ2. So I now know as the radar controller that that little primary contact, the non-squawker, is talking to someone and the altitude's known, it's outside controlled airspace. If something appears there and I'm not talking to it and I've run, are you working anything in, say, TMZ1? They go, no. Okay. It's now deemed to be an unknown, so I have to try and avoid it. So that's where the problem occurs, because we had so many aircraft infringe the base of controlled airspace, especially under runway 04 and that north wheeled area. So many things would pop up through the bottom of controlled airspace. And as Stansted, you're dropping to 2,000 feet on a base leg, and they could be 1,500. As soon as they hit 1,600 feet, they're inside controlled airspace. You've had a loss of separation. So that's why the TMZs were brought in. So everything was a known quantity. But it's best endeavours to avoid that primary contact if it isn't talking to anybody. So it can cause a lot of problems very quickly. So hence we encourage people to either speak to Farnborough or speak to ourselves if non-transponding.
Have I got the ability to share in something, Paul?
I should hope so. I was going to share a bit of Sky Demon just to show what the TM.
All right. I've just got a little illustration. You're just talking about primary and secondary contacts. I've just got a little. Does that come in?
Yes, it does. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant.
Cool. So if I go from current slide. So this is just an illustration of what the controller would be looking at. We've got the blue dashed lines are airspace boundaries. The solid lines there are the approaches to a little airfield, which is represented by the square. So a primary contact is one that's just come from just purely the radar reflection. So, you know, all our radar heads have pinged out some radio waves, they've bounced off something, and they've given us a little target, and that would just appear to us as just a plus sign there, the little green. There's a few of them in this little illustration, and we would have some history. These are we call trail dots. So we get a sense of the movement of the target. So if a pilot or an aircraft isn't transponder equipped, that's all we would see. if someone has a transponder, we look at these 7,000 squawk up in the top left. We've now got it's actually a multiplication sign transposed on top of the plus, so it appears as kind of a little asterisk. And then obviously we have the little lubber line showing us that this guy's squawking 7,000, and that will move with the target. So if we actually give someone a squawk, such as the 7042, that will move with the target, and we can either keep the identity of the aircraft that way. And if you've got altitude reporting, that would appear below it, as in the one on the right-hand side there, the 3712. And below that is an altitude readout showing us that this aircraft is indicating 2,700 feet. Now that's the relevant bit. And if you push ident, we see a little dashed circle appear around your target and flash a few times. So that's the difference between primary and secondary in terms of what we would see in front of us.
And just whilst you're on there, that was really good, interesting to see. How do you remember all the different registrations that go with those contacts?
Ah, well, that's
magical.
Yeah. No. We record that on what's called a flight progress strip, which where Amanda and I work is electronic now. I'm not sure if I've got something I can show you, but basically it's a it used to be paper and handwritten, and like I say, they've now digitized it, so we're tapping away furiously whenever you try and give us your flight details, and that will record the call sign type, where you're coming from, and to any squawk we allocate. So we are generally constantly referencing backwards and forwards. But in that case, who have I given the 7042 squawk? And you would look down your bay of strips to find out which aircraft you've allocated that squawk to. For the big guys, the IFR flight plan stuff, we have the luxury of having their call signs associated in the computer, so we would actually see the call sign displayed. So that saves a lot of checking up and down. But for the discrete squawks we allocate, it will be on the individual flight progress strip that we've created to represent the flight. And
do I guess with a bit like anything you practice in life, do you kind of end up remembering some of the registrations and the to's and the froms on those particular squawks, or do you have to still look every single time?
We kind of know that Golf Foxtrot Papa Echo Hotel lives at Elstree or Paul's House. You know, that's I actually put Paul's House when you check in.
Yeah. I put home, yeah.
So if we took over from each other, we'd understand, but everyone else would be a bit clueless. But the whole idea is that we use and we move the strips around the bay to kind of represent what we've done with the traffic. The idea being that if I keeled over, Amanda could sort of push my lifeless body to one side and would be able to look at the strip display and see what I was doing and pick it up. So it's all quite regimented what we actually do, and where we place the strip in relation to others kind of represents something that everyone in the room should understand.
Sophie, I think, has got a question. Looks like she's raised a hand. Hi, Sophie.
Hey. Sorry, I'm working in the meantime, so that's why I'm hiding. But the slide you just showed us was really interesting, and I was just wondering if everywhere in the world they see that. Do they? Is that the same radar everywhere?
Different presentations, but generally it will be very, very similar, depending. It really depends on the display equipment they've got. Places like Farnborough, I think, they've just got little computer screen type things. Ours are quite big, you know, sort of, what would you think? 2 foot by 2 foot screens. You know,
cathode ray kind of tennis, kind of that kind of size is what we've got.
Yeah. older radars would have the more traditional sort of round display, and you can actually see the update sweeping round. That tends to be what people put in movies, that kind of thing.
Pushing tin, yeah.
Okay, but so what we saw was blue lines. And so what does that represent? Because when, for example, when I'm coming into the zone, and that's the first contact, so that means I haven't talked to you yet. How do you know where am I then?
We have when someone calls up and says, oh, I've departed from Elstree and I want to go to here, we're already forming a picture of how, I know Elstree is, 12, 15 miles to the south of Luton. So I'm already looking in that position. I've got a picture somewhere of the actual radar display that we use. I'll try and find it while I'm talking. So we kind of, from what you're telling us, we already have an idea. Obviously, if one of Paul's call signs, as soon as we hear that, we're looking, well, we know, unless you've been
Elstree, home, yeah.
Elstree or home, yeah, it's got to be there somewhere. Not saying you're repetitive, Paul, no.
All predictable.
If it's 7:30 in the morning, you know which way it is, and if
Absolutely,
it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, yeah, it's the other way.
And similarly, we know which, I can recognise a few of the ones that come out of Denham or Henlow and that kind of thing. Yeah. You kind of already have an idea, but really, I mean, that's why it's important you tell us what your intentions are, because it might be something completely out of the blue. But we are
okay.
One thing that I use on both Stansted and Luton, more or less on Luton, we have a long range radar set up, so you can filter out any traffic apart from the Luton inbounds. So my main radar display, I have everything showing that I need to, so other people's traffic to get in my way. But the long range, I can also filter in all the Luton domestic squawks like 4670, 4671. So if I'm not sure where you are and I've given you a squawk, if I look up at that, it will show me on that display whereabouts you are. I can then correlate it with my main radar and find out where you are. Because some people say they're in one place and they're somewhere totally different.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened to me once. And I was like, where are you? And I'm like, actually, I don't know. So, but I'm in the vicinity. And so, but why don't you see me? I'm like in front of the river or whichever where I was at the moment. And like, but that's the big river. But I don't know.
It's easily done. It is easily done. I had someone accidentally entered the Luton zone because they mistook the M1 for the M40.
Yeah.
So they thought they were a lot
further away.
It was quite significant. And once Farnborough was speaking to this aircraft, I'd managed to get one of the departures and had to vector it away. Bless her, she was terrified, but it was just a matter of, is she okay? Yes. Did we manage to get the traffic out of the way? Yes, we did. And just take it from there, because of course, as you guys know, the last thing you want to do is add pressure in that situation. And it is easily done.
On your screen, do you have roads, rivers, towns, place names, anything like that? Or can you
do? Yeah, we can overlay on Thames. We obviously overlay the heli routes and the restricted areas. Things
You get
like
the M25 as well, don't you, on Special?
Can do. I find that a bit cluttery a lot of the time. So, but yes, you know, it's a little bit of personal choice. Some people like a nice clean screen. Some people want everything sort of on there. But it's kind of a balance. So on Thames again, we can put the river on, and that obviously leads on to H4 and all the restricted areas in the centre. We don't tend to put the roads on at Luton because, you know, the A1 goes up one side, the M1 goes up the other. It's pretty much, you know, it's not that helpful.
Oh, Shani.
Hi. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to Amanda, because I've just started speaking on the radio, and I have spoken to you, and you're probably one of the most friendliest persons I've ever spoken to.
You're so welcome. You're so
I'm
welcome.
serious. I speak to Farnborough the other day, and they just barked at me, and it was horrible. And I said helicopter, and then gave the call sign, and I think they think I've got another limb, because I couldn't remember what the squawk code was and what the QNH was, and I just looked frantically at my instructor, and I thought, what? You know, and I think that's one of the problems that I face as a student. I always say really clearly helicopter, and then give the call sign. But it was interesting. So I was in there the other day, and I was listening to somebody on the radio, and I think Luton or Farnborough had given them a squawk code, and they put it in, and we were listening to the chat, and it wasn't coming up on the radar.
Yeah.
So what happens then? So you're giving someone a squawk code, and they're putting it in there, and you're saying, well, it's not coming up. So what's the process? What do they press ident, or what do you do?
So I think it's a matter of making sure the transponder's working or turned on. See, Helena's probably better knowing the flying side of this. I did my solo at Booker, and I was terrified. I was so pleased to get on the ground. My instructor came running over. You're down. Yes, we're alive. Brilliant. And that was it. So yeah, Helena, over to you for that one.
Yeah, I mean, the phraseology we would use to get you to check it would be reset. We would confirm reset such and such a squawk. And then it's really, as Amanda says, down to the pilot to make sure, is it switched on? Is it on the right mode? So it's not just sitting there on standby, you know, you've actually got it on or altitude reporting or whatever your transponder is capable of. And then it sort of, if we still can't see that, it then comes down to a sort of a slightly more, in fact, even just going back before that, we'd probably check what level you're at just to make sure that you're within cover. With SSR, it's pretty much guaranteed around London that you will be. And we use a system called multi-radar tracking. So pretty much every radar that NAT has access to contributes to our picture that we're looking at. So if one fails, it shouldn't really make too much difference because it's sort of supplemented by the others. So even before we start doing that, we just make sure that, you know, level and range, you're actually within within cover of the systems we're using. Then it would be for you to check that everything is working correctly. You then, if sort of the obvious things are working, is there an avionics switch that needs selecting as the circuit breaker popped? It's kind of looking down those sort of lines then. If it's still not working, then we'd probably have to assume that it either if we still can't find you, maybe I have had a case where I was looking for someone because he told me he was in one place, and in a similar sort of thing, once I expanded the range on the radar, it was actually sort of 50 miles in the other direction. So, you know, just making sure you're actually on our display would be sort of another thing. Otherwise, we just have to try and accommodate what you wanted to do by identifying you as a primary only target.
So even without that squawk, you could still potentially, aren't you? We're there.
Yeah, unless you want to go anywhere near a transponder mandatory zone, of course. But but yes, I mean, it's a little bit more difficult for us. Because we have the luxury these days of working with most things that do have transponders. But what we have to do is we would ask you to report the heading you're currently on. And that would obviously eliminate sort of a certain number of the targets. If you tell me you're going north, then I believe you, and I would think, right, it's not going to be that one tracking east, it's not going to be that one tracking west.
It's like getting, isn't it?
Yes.
Has got a beard? Yes.
I would then ask you to make a turn and see your target comply with that request. I can then say, right, you're identified, and you can resume your own navigation. But because you're not holding that little flag that says, you know, 4670 or whatever the score you've been given, it's a lot more difficult for us to maintain the identity. And if we get distracted, we go and do, you know, goodness knows how many other tasks. And I've got to come back and say, can I put my hand on my heart and say, right, that's still Shani in her helicopter going that way. So we might have, if I can't say, yep, that's definitely it, we would have to go through the whole process again.
Oh,
And yeah, so it's, from our point of view, it's a bit more work.
oh wow!
But
Can you not assign a sort of an unidentified or whatever character to that particular?
We can sort of target. What do you call it? So that little square box you can
Just a little bit highlighting.
Okay.
That will do highlights, yes. But if the target fades for any reason, it drops off.
Oh,
So
right.
it's not, yeah, it's not 100%. And plus, if you go through, well, like I say, not so much these days at Swanwick because we've got the multi-radar thing. But if you're somewhere where the radar is on the airport itself, and that's all they've got access to, as you go through the overhead, you enter the cone of invisibility. And so you'd probably have to be re-identified once you came out the other side.
Got it.
I remember that at Stansted, of course, using single source going through the overhead of the S10 and things would just disappear. You're thinking, where is he? And it's just that moment where it just disappears, then comes back again.
Somebody, I'm so sorry, I can't recognise, don't know, but it says A320 Lounge has stuck his hand up.
Oh, yeah, apologies. I don't know why that's from a previous meeting. So yeah, just to echo Shayla's point, I've spoken to Amanda many times. I'm based at Luton, for someone that may or may not have their headquarters at Luton. And I just wondered, you say you've gone solo. Have you got you've got your license as well, have you?
I just did. So Nats used to pay for a sort of flying training early on. So it was 2002. I got 15 hours just to do my solo. And I did it at Booker. I've never been so scared.
Did it change how you operated at work, having seen it from the other side?
Yes, I remember being downwind. Where's the airfield, Amanda? Well, I can't see it. So you know it is difficult to pick out things. So if I hear someone struggling VFR, I know it's not easy. So it's like holding someone's hand. I've had so many people lost. I just keep hold of them. Can I stay with you? Of course you can. Until they know where they are, until they're comfortable where they are, because it's not a nice feeling being out there thinking, well, I don't know where the airfield's gone. And yeah, so I really do have a real appreciation for what you guys do.
Yeah, no, it's nice because I've done the same where I've been up in the tower and things to see it from your point of view, and we've had air traffic controllers on the jump seat, and it's a really good learning experience because there's sometimes we think, oh, why do they always ask us to do that? And then when someone says, well, because, you know, we need to know for X, Y, and Z reason, it's really useful.
It's like asking aircraft types, and especially at Stansted, wingtip clearance on some of the taxiways, because there's certain things you can go through down certain taxiways because you've got stands on the end, and you're thinking one day the wingtip's going to clip the tail of that one. So silly little things that may say, well, what are you doing that for? Why are we slowing down? What number are we? There's all sorts of things going through our head just trying to get everything together. But no, it's been a real eye-opener, especially again doing sort of jump seat flights, and even for me visiting the tower, because it's a different world to radar. But the whole VFR and PPL, again, I do have a real appreciation because I've said Essex is so flat and you can get lost so quickly.
Yeah, and it's daunting. There's so much airspace that, you know, when I'm flying at work, it's easy really because we've got a full navigation display. You're looking after us completely. But when you're up in a light aircraft, it's really daunting with so much airspace everywhere that you spend your whole time avoiding airspace and enjoying the view.
It's like being on the outside looking in. It is a different world, especially with getting to stand by, remain outside, or we'll give you somewhere that you're not used to. Can you hold here? And it'll throw you because it's not what you're expecting. So, yeah.
If you go back to good old classic map, stopwatch, and compass, and as the chap, sorry, I don't know your name. What is your name?
Oh, Matt.
Hello, Matt. Yeah, like Matt said, if you didn't have your GPS on as well, and you're just trying to fly VFR around a fairly flat open area, say around sort of Essex, etc., it's hard work, isn't it? So it's so nice from a VFR pilot's point of view that we've got somebody like Amanda or Helena just watching over us, hopefully going to warn us if we are about to bust somebody's airspace and just and help avoid it. It's very nice and helpful, yeah, without a doubt.
The listening squawks have come in quite handy. I had someone a few weeks ago, so you do know you're approaching the edge of the Luton zone. Oh, am I? Yes. Thank you. So rather than them coming in and having to break off inbounds, that was avoided. So it does help. People don't always like to use them, but if in doubt, talk to us.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. There is still that mentality out there, isn't there? Don't turn the transponder on or they'll see you.
My flying instructor said, if you ever infringe, see, you would never do this. He said, if you ever infringe, go find another little gaggle of aircraft, turn your transponder off and go off in a different direction. I'm thinking, no, don't teach these people this. You can't do that.
Oh, it's just hideous. But
the thing is, you can play the radar replay backwards and you can track people that way. So
I was taught a similar thing back in the day. Same sort of thing. Oh God, you know, there's me, dutiful student, turn the transponder on, ALT 7000 instructor. Oh no, don't do that. They'll see you, Paul. What do you mean they'll see me? Yeah, it's horrendous. But we're trying to teach everybody. No, please turn it on ALT. Talk to them. Squawk listening codes, all sorts of things. And yeah.
Yeah, as Amanda said, the listening codes are really good. They've prevented goodness knows how many infringements because we know someone is just monitoring the frequency and we can talk to them if we need to. But I think the message that everyone's trying to sort of put out now is, you know, we would rather talk to someone, and you know, hopefully we're not too scary. Even our more intimidating sounding people probably aren't a kind of pussycat in the end, aren't they? So,
yeah,
you know, we'd rather talk to people than have to deal with paperwork at the end of the shift. I think it's possibly. and sort of a point that fitted in with what someone said before. If you don't catch what anyone said, it was you, Shani, wasn't it? You know, if you don't catch what someone says, please ask, you know, say again, ask us to repeat it, because what's important is that you have got the correct information or you understand what you're being asked to do. So if either of those two criteria aren't fulfilled, say again. And I think I apologise to our colleagues at Farnborough, but I think that most controllers would rather repeat themselves, get the message across and understood correctly, rather than, as I say, no one likes staying late to do paperwork at the end of the shift.
And I know I've had to ask crews, I think by the fourth time I asked, I thought, I don't understand what you're asking me. I'm sorry, say again, I don't understand. And I feel bad doing, but I know I've got to do it because I've got to understand. I don't know what you're trying to tell me. So we'll do it. It's just one of those things.
It's odd, isn't it? From a pilot's point of view, it's just about not being afraid to just speak and to ask, and just the very base level we end up teaching is just make sure you're not causing confusion. Just say what you need to say in the least amount of words. Don't have to do it quickly. Just clear. Just get them across and do it in stages if you really have to. Do it in increments.
We'll always give you the time because you think, I know the rest of this clearance is coming. And there it is. But you just get to know. And of course, there are so many students learning. And I think the student prefix is always good because you're that little bit more aware that it may take a little bit more time. They're going to be a bit more nervous. So, yeah, I always take an extra care.
Now, we do use the student prefix to denote a solo, but if I remember rightly, unless it changed, originally it was just simply that you are a student pilot, not necessarily solo, just you're a student pilot. You could have an instructor on board, but I don't know if that is still the case, and certainly I don't think anybody uses it like that anymore. They use it just purely to denote a solo flight, don't they?
See, I've had it for solos, but again, someone could say student, there could be 4 people in the back, I don't know, because I just wouldn't be aware. You know what I mean? But yeah,
I'm happy for anybody to correct me, but I'm sure when it first came out, it was just simply that I am learning to fly. So please, you know, bear with me.
Well, when it came out, it also replaced the tyro
Yes.
thing, which denoted kind of low experience. So it kind of sort of superseded that. So it took on that meaning as well. So so apart from, you know, when we are announcing ourselves as a student pilot, the only other time it would be of interest is during an emergency call, where it would still be understood to be the equivalent of the tyro low experience kind of thing. I think you can still use it in that context.
Because I guess you figure if the instructor's on board during an emergency, they're probably going to jump in and say something.
Probably. I certainly would.
That'd be me. Like, no, go on, you carry on with the Mayday. You did a good job with it. Give it a go. Oh dear. Oh, Shani.
Sorry, me again. The other thing that confuses me quite a lot, I'm going to admit it, it's about capacity. So when you're learning, you've got a certain amount of capacity and you build on it as you build on your hours. So I've just about got out my first radio call. I've done the pass your message and asked the basic service, and I've actually managed to get the squawk code in and the QNH. And I'm thinking, phew, I can breathe now. So now I can just focus on where I am. And then I hear somebody on the radio, you know, air traffic control saying, and they give me my call sign, which sounds like my call sign, but it isn't. Because if I'm flying Golf, Golf, for example, I've been in Golf, Charlie, Golf, 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 and I've heard someone say Golf, Golf, and then give a message. But it's not for me. It's for a fixed wing that's got a similar call sign. And that's thrown me sometimes because I'm actually not sure whether you're speaking to me and I'm supposed to do something, or you're speaking to somebody else. So if you are, and you're saying, well, you know, be careful because there's something else heading towards me, or, you know, you're asking me to get a visual on something, what do I do if you don't answer? If I don't answer because I don't know you're talking to me, what would you do?
Try again.
Just repeat and shout at me again and say,
no shouting. No.
Are you listening, Golf?
Well, firstly, I mean, we've obviously got a procedure if we have two similar abbreviated call signs on frequency where we would ask you. So we would try and avoid any confusion that way, but you're obviously just latching on to sort of part of someone else's call sign. If they don't answer, I would say it was perfectly acceptable for you to say, Golf, 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 was that for me? And, you know, if no one else responds to the call, give it a few minutes or a few seconds rather, see if no one else has responded, and you know, if that was for me, say again please, you know.
Not as an instructor, Shani, I've done that a few times because of course we're talking to you, trying to instruct you, not talking too much, but we're always listening to the radio, and you just, as you rightly say, you hear a Golf, Golf, you think, oh, that might have been for us, and we'll just ask, as I said, we'll just ask, Golf, 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 was that for us? Or of course, I've not very often done this, but if as an instructor or as as your pilot flying around, if you've got somebody else's call sign that you keep thinking is yours, you can just request to use full call signs to make life much clearer. It can be it can be both ends, kind of. You can ask it from us, and we can ask it from you, just to make our life easier. Otherwise, it can be very distracting because you're now really listening out on the radio and not necessarily paying attention properly to your flying.
That's the problem. Yeah, because then you I'm not sure what I'm, you know, I can't multitask yet. I will do, hopefully.
I think that happened with us, Paul.
Yes, yeah, I think so. That's right.
I remember we were flying, doing a nav to Hartford. I think we were flying Hotel Oscar November India at the time.
In Honey,
and there was a Delta Oscar November India on the frequency.
That's right, there was, wasn't it? And every time it was us.
Was that for us?
Yeah.
So we kept having to go full registration, didn't we?
Yeah, and we literally asked them to be full reg because it
was.
If
they had that, the controllers should have done the whole Golf Hotel Oscar November India useful call sign, similar call sign on frequency. Golf Delta Oscar November India, the same thing. Yeah. So but it can take us a few seconds to spot it sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
I'm more likely to make the mistake than the crews are, because my instinct is to put golf on the front of everything rather than Delta. So there's a helicopter, Yankee uniform, whatever. Every time he calls it, I can never get it first off. It started with
Yankee uniform, hope to like a Yankee. What's the problem?
yeah, even now it's like some form of dyslexia. I can never get it out. Never.
Gazelle, isn't it? If I remember rightly.
Sorry, it's a gazelle. Yeah,
Gazelle, isn't it? Yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah, it's very predictable as well.
I was flying up at Northampton a while back, and I heard a fixed wing pilot make a call to say he was going into Grafton Water, which is obviously the lake, and he had to quickly correct himself. So no, I'm not going into it. I'm actually flying over it. I've heard some real. It makes me feel better. Put it that way.
Yeah, perfect. And yes,
we all make total slips of the tongue, and you're thinking, I hope that one was just glossed over. Did anyone pick up on that? No, just keep talking, Amanda, keep talking, they won't notice. So yeah, it isn't just you.
Oh, something I wanted to ask, just for my own personal reference, if that's okay, is back when the transponders used to be twiddle the knobs around to get the numbers, as we twiddled them around, if we didn't put it on standby, presumably you'd see it changing on the screen.
Yeah.
And if we were not very clever, we would cycle accidentally through 7700. Now,
does that actually activate other people's flight plans? You've turned into Speedbird 1. You've now turned into American 1-4. Look, you're EasyJet 1-2-3. And sometimes if people are out by a digit, if that squawk's active long enough, you can activate someone's flight plan.
Really? Brilliant.
So EasyJet sort of poodling around at sort of 2000, you think, no, that's not actually. And going at sort of 90 knots, and you think, no, that's not an EasyJet.
I don't know this for certain, but presumably on the more modern transponders that pretty much everybody now sees, where you just push the numbers to get your squawk. As we're pushing those numbers, do you actually see it change on your screen, or do you only see it once all four have been selected?
No, it seems to just go once it's the new code is in there. Yeah.
So therefore, we don't.
I don't know if that's some magic electronic wizardry in the machine. I expect so. And obviously the VFR buttons are an absolute godsend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that tended to be when you had the danger of 77 being dialed up when people were setting back to 7,000. So
it's so nowadays we don't need to put it on standby to change the transponder code. You just push the numbers in, and if we don't complete the sequence after a few seconds, it just defaults back anyway to what it was on previously. So I was just curious, that was all. Now, if we do accidentally put, for instance, 77, does that suddenly illuminate on your screen?
Yes, and every radar screen in the country.
Yeah.
No.
You'll flash up SOS.
Surge flashing on every screen.
It breaks through every height filter, everything, so everybody can see.
And I'm guessing 7.5 is the same, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
7.5.
What about 7.6? Does that do the same as well?
Yeah.
Oh well,
RT fail. Yeah. And then the 7.5 obviously flashes up hijack, and everyone goes, what?
Yeah. I presume you see that less and less nowadays accidentally occurring because of the more modern transponders.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I say, I think the big help there has just been the one I fly has obviously just got the VFR button, and it does it magically for you. So that's
because I have at Elstree accidentally scored 7.7. It said 7,000 on the transponder, but it was back in the day when it's
just halfway between the.
It said 700, and it's Elstree that got onto me, and then they started searching.
They probably got a phone call from D&D saying, "What's happening in your circuit?"
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. We've got an aircraft that appears to be doing circuits, but seems to be in some sort of distress.
Yeah, they if we have anything that flashes up one of the special purpose codes near us, you kind of expect the phone line from D&D to ring if we haven't obviously told them, because it's not a real thing happening. So what's that? Nothing.
Didn't do it.
So they're obviously watching the whole of the country now. Because we now only have the one distress and diversion cell down with us in the little. They in the ops room that Amanda and I work in, they've sort of boxed off a set of offices, and the distress and diversion cell is in there now, and they lock themselves in, don't they? They lock themselves in. I don't know what they think we're going to do to them. But...
Steal their chairs. I saw them go in. They've got really comfy chairs.
Do they actually have a security door?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's always locked.
Swipe in, yeah. It says being RAF, and you never know if there's exercise going on in there, being military.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Forget about that. Yeah, we forget that that's the D&D's military, isn't it?
Yeah. Fish tank back at West Drayton. That's all I remember.
Something I'm sure that everybody would probably want to know is, and hopefully I'm just looking around on the names on here, fair few people should generally know how to get a Class D zone transit, and that's relatively straightforward. But what's the difference between special VFR and just normal VFR through Class D?
Right.
Station calling, nothing heard.
So roll my sleeves up. Okay, so we now are playing by two sets of VFR rules within, as Amanda and I both do Luton, we'll speak about Luton. So if you wanted to go through the Luton control zone, what VFR minima would you be using? Everyone loves VFR.
Somebody be brave and say, go on, Shani.
So without any dispensation, if we're not going to go anywhere near the ATZ, we need 5 kilometers flight visibility, 1,500 meters laterally from cloud, and 1,000 feet vertically. We've now got a little dispensation to,
sorry, there we go.
Yeah, that's it. To reduce that to 5 kilometers. Hey, there we go. 5 kilometers clear of cloud and in sight of the surface, can't we? If we're flying at a less than
140 knots.
And below.
The transition layer.
3,000 feet.
3,000 feet, isn't it? Yeah.
So,
it used to be
interestingly, and I only just sort of appreciated this the other day, because the Luton control zone goes up to 3,500 feet. So we couldn't actually be VFR with using the reduced weather criteria if we're above 3,000 feet. As you can see it here, the control zone surface to 3,500. Anyway, digressing slightly. So if we had outside controlled airspace, we've got 4,000 meters, so everything's hunky-dory, we can be VFR, but if we wanted to go through the control zone, we would need 5 kilometers.
Oops.
So basically we're looking at a situation where, and it's only available in control zones, so instead of complying with the VFR, we would now be flying under special VFR rules because the weather is not suitable to maintain VMC in the control zone. So from your point of view, as the pilot, it won't really make too much difference. We're still going to navigate by reference to the surface. We're still going to avoid objects visually. And there's a couple of other sort of more administrative criteria that we're going to fly within the limitations of our license and comply with the clearance given. From the controller's point of view, it's a little bit more restrictive, because if we're VFR in Class D airspace, I just have to pass traffic information, tell everyone about everyone else, and as long as everyone's happy, that's job done. If you're special VFR, I actually have to provide and ensure separation between the special VFR aircraft and any IFR aircraft that I'm working. So from a practical point of view, this might mean that the route or the level is going to be a little bit more restrictive than it might be VFR. So instead of you're being able to just zip through VFR not above 2,400 feet, I might say, no, I need you not above altitude 1,500 feet so that I can ensure that I can still bring my IFR traffic 1,000 feet above you and it will remain separated.
Helena, is it always got to be 1,000-foot vertical separation?
That's our standard separation, yeah.
Mhm.
So we can have 1,000 feet, or I might give you a route that's going to keep you 3 miles away from the IFR traffic. So we've got 2 lines of defense. We can either sort of do it vertically or sort of laterally, geographically, if you like, to maintain standard separation, which is 1,000 feet and or 3 miles from any other traffic. So like I say, from the point of view of the pilot, it doesn't really make any difference to how we operate, but it's a lot more restrictive for ATC, meaning that we would either use a route or a level that's going to mean that there's minimum disruption to our IFR traffic.
The main difference that we see is potentially normally you'll let us sort of fly through like that, won't you?
Yes.
Just straight through. However,
so just going to say, so as long as we stay outside the ATZ in the middle there, even if the weather is marginal, it's pilot determined. So if it was marginal conditions and you said VFR, I might come back to you and say, oh, the visibility at Luton is 3 kilometres. Confirm you want a VFR or special VFR clearance. The weather might be completely different over near Hitchin or down by Hemel Hempstead. So you might think, no, I can still, maintain the required visual reference. So you might stick with a VFR clearance. The difference comes if you want to go through the ATZ, as Paul just drew for us a little while ago, because then it is the choice is taken away from you basically, and the flight rules are determined by the Met observation at the airport. If you wanted to follow the red line there, and the visibility was say 3 kilometres, or the cloud ceiling was less than 1,500 feet, the ATZ has become special VFR. You don't have a choice anymore. So it will be a special VFR transit as you go through the ATZ. As I say, if it's special VFR, we have got to maintain and ensure that separation is maintained, and that includes stuff arriving and departing at the airport. So it might mean we've actually got what's, let's say we're coming down from the north. So we might ask you to hold at Offley, where you can be VFR. Sneaky, but you could be. And then we wait for a gap in arrivals and departures. That's it. We might say, hold there. And that's fine. Wait for a gap in arrivals and departures, and then transit you through special VFR so that we can ensure that no one gets closer than 3 miles or 1,000 feet to you. We'll often get the tower involved in this case. And I must admit, Luton Tower aren't very enthusiastic these days to take traffic. They'd rather we did it for them. But they can look out of the window and use what's called reduced separation in the vicinity of the aerodrome. So they can look up to the north at Offley and say, right, I can see a helicopter there. That's nowhere near the one I'm about to depart. They are separated. So it's kind of someone actually physically being able to see both things and thinking, well, they're never going to be an issue to each other.
Oh, I didn't know that. It's interesting.
There you go. Of course, we are talking about when weather conditions are not so good. So when I used to work Luton Tower, we'd often hold the departure on the ground, let the helicopter come in, ask them to put their landing lights on. Oh, there you are. And then we can launch the departure. So it's another way around it, rather than stopping everything. The tower have this capacity to help us.
So from a helicopter pilot's point of view, from the difference for us between special VFR and VFR, it isn't blatantly obvious. other than it seems to be a slightly more faff if we have to go through special VFR, because there might be a bit of a hold, frequency change to the tower. And this is often, yeah, this is sometimes the confusion. And then, of course, whether to request it or not, we get into that realms of, do we request it straight away? Do we not? How do we know whether we need to request a special VFR?
Yeah, well, like I say, our requirements are if you're not coming through the ATZ, as soon as otherwise it just works on visibility. And obviously, as helicopter pilots, you can go down a little bit lower than than we fixed wing types can. So we would tell you you've called me up wanting a transit. I would say, Roger, the visibility at Luton is 4,000 meters, and then you know what flight rules do you want to transit under? And as I say, where you are, it might be a hell of a lot better. It might be worse. So.
Because I've had this back in the early day when it's God, I can't think how long ago it was now. When special VFR changed and came back in again, as it were, almost the requirement for it. I went to do a zone transit through Luton, and I was with somebody that's trained to be a commercial helicopter pilot, and we just planned to go from south to north and do whatever else, and requested a zone transit, and the controller came back and said about the weather conditions. I don't remember it being anything particular. And said more or less state your intentions, I think it was. God,
yeah, that's another way of I would ask the question more directly.
Oh, no, actually, yes, they said negative at first and state your intentions. And I sort of looked across and thought, not heard that before.
Yeah.
Okay. They've not said why. They just said we can't go through a zone transit VFR. What do we want to do? And there was that kind of, we literally end up saying, stand by one, and had a bit of a chat like, I don't really know actually. Okay. And there was that moment of I'm not really. So I said, okay, look, I've got a backup plan. They won't let us through. I don't know why yet. So we'll just go through Stansted instead. So we changed freaks. They said they're normally a bit more tricky, but we'll try and get through. And Stansted said, no problem at all. Yeah, VFR zone transit cleared to enter, blah blah blah. And we went literally across the threshold or just outside the threshold. And we come back sort of shaking heads, thinking, I don't really understand what's happened there, not entirely. And it was only then transpired a little bit later on that the VFR to special VFR criteria had just changed. And of course, as far as I'm aware of, as air traffic controllers, you're not allowed to offer it to us, are you?
No, not if you're going through the ATZ. The choice is taken away if the criteria are met. Then one thing we have got at Luton as part of our entry-exit lanes, which might be worth appreciating, if you're in the lane, the maximum altitude is 1,500 feet. So you've got to stay within the little the dotted line we can see going. There we go. Yeah, so if you're within the lane and north of the Offley VRP or south of the Hyde VRP, look at this. This is good. I'd like you, anything I talk on, Paul, to highlight. We can use what we have written into our procedures, what's called a deemed separation. So anything north of those or south of those 2 points below 1,500 feet in the lane is deemed separated from anything coming into or departing from Luton's runways. So that's something else you might be asked. So even though the Hyde one is just inside the ATZ, we can still get away with it using our deemed separation that, in the light of experience, these two things are never going to be an issue to each other. So we might use those: hold at Hyde, deemed separated, contact the tower can see you. We're now, we've got all these tools to use, you see. We're now using visual separation with the tower to get you through the actual runway. And then once you're out the other side, we can go back to using 3 miles and 1,000 feet. All good fun. As long as you can come up with a reason that it is separated, jobs are good.
Okay. apart from this one,
go through the whole list, then game over. Yeah.
Apart from this one time, and I can't remember how long ago, it must have been at least 2 years ago or more. I kind of forget last year. I've never come across it again since. It was just a bizarre moment where we've said, no, you can't come through. And there's no, I mean, looking across, it was blue sky. I couldn't understand the reasoning by it. And I guess there must have just been a bit of cloud literally within the ATZ that we couldn't see from where we were, that was causing it to be, it was causing it to drop down to special VFR. But honestly, it was blue sky and over 2,000 feet everywhere else. It's bizarre. Yeah.
So what happens when you build an airport on a hill, though?
Yeah. I say, I'd just like to point out to everybody, it was definitely not Helena or Amanda on the radio at the time.
Or it might have been just when they sort of introduced the fact that we've got two different VFR criteria, and someone was just kind of maxed out with the whole idea, maybe. I
think that's what it boiled down to, and we didn't pick up on the cue of just them requesting a special VFR clearance. Had we have done that, it probably would have been okay. It was just bizarre, but there we are. I
had somebody looking for VFR transit via the 2.5 threshold, south to north. Negative, my weather's this. Can you accept that? No, we'll have IFR. God, here we go.
Oh, no, so, that's even worse.
Yeah, it was escalated. Okay, so an IFR. Have I got anything inbound? No. Have I got anything outbound? Check with tower. Well, does he want IFR because of the weather? Well, yeah. He then updated it and went VFR. I thought you could have done that before. If the weather was up to date, I wouldn't have had this series of conversations. And, oh, by the way, go through VFR, can we? I'd already started the climb to 3,000 feet to go IFR, was not really. So, yeah, that didn't help.
Oh, Chris, sorry. I've just put you back on screen so I can see everything. You've got a question.
Just going back to what you said, Paul, if you're told you're flying special VFR, how does that differ from the pilot's point of view and what you've got to do in flying the helicopter?
This is what I mean. It can be not confusing, but you might not understand exactly what the difference is, other than the radio seems to be slightly more work. You might be given a bit more of a restrictive clearance. So as far as we want to go, through the ATZ to go and enjoy the view of the runway, and so we've been told, no, you've got to remain clear of the ATZ. And it's like, well, why? I can see perfectly all right. I don't understand what's going on. And it's just because of maintaining that separation. So you might not get the exact request or routing that you require. But I say normally through Luton, it's really not a problem because of those specific lanes, and especially if we're below 1,500 foot following them, like Helena said, they can keep us clear.
I mean, I don't think it's any different for a helicopter pilot to a fixed wing. It doesn't really make too much difference. You're still going to navigate by reference to the surface, visually avoid obstacles, not go through any other ATZs. Thinking now of the London zone where you've got Denham and White Waltham and Fair Oaks down to the south, which obviously aren't under the auspices of Heathrow radar. So if you wanted to go through those, you would have to arrange your own transit through the smaller airfields, ATZ or local flying area. Fly within the limitations of your license and comply with the clearance that you're given. That's 5, wasn't it? Yeah. So that's so in essence, the way you're actually manipulating and navigating doesn't really change.
No. Back, I mean, Chris has been flying a long time, like myself, and we remember, well, probably remembers special VFR. You only ever seem to request it when you wanted to go into the heli lanes. But of course, that's back when it was Class A airspace. So we'd have this special dispensation to get in there in Class A, which of course you wouldn't normally be allowed to fly. Then it's almost like special VFR disappeared for a long time and then reappeared again. I mean, for years and years, I can remember flying and never ever coming across it, never had needing to use it. And then suddenly, to say whatever it was 2 or 3 years ago, bam, there it is. It's cropped up again.
I think it was the Serra, what was it, 5001 that made it necessary in an ATZ. That's why it's all become a little bit more.
That's when it reappeared, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit more pertinent or a little bit more frequent, shall we say, because it's taken everyone's discretion away. That's the weather. There's no question. It's special VFR in the ATZ.
That's it. Can it be special VFR in the rest of the zone at all?
It can be, yes, yeah. But again, outside of that, in the CTR, it's pilot determined. So I mean, and I've had a lot of people I'm not going to name sort of company names, but commercial helicopter operators going in and out of Battersea, where you know full well they have not got contact with the ground because Heathrow are reporting 1,000 feet on the clouds, so Battersea, so the cloud is at 1,000 feet. Oh no, yeah, we'll be Special VFR, and they'll come in 1,300 feet. Obviously, sort of GPSing towards. They know where Battersea is, and they know where the obstructions are. But yes, rather than they'll still declare themselves, but it's pilot determined, and so I couldn't possibly comment.
Okay, so if we want to do a zone transit just simply through clear the ATZ through Luton, and the cloud base is below 1,500, let's just say it's 1,200 feet. Can you say negative to that VFR clearance?
1,200 feet, no, as long as you've got, they're sort of, again, sort of below 3,000 feet, less than 140 knots, as long as you've got your 800 meters, I think, for helicopters. Yeah, as long as you've got 800 meters flight visibility, clear of cloud, in sight of the surface, your VFR.
Yeah, so
and it's your interpretation of the conditions that you're going to be seeing.
Yeah, I think hopefully that's cleared up a lot of confusion. It's all really to do with the ATZ itself, isn't it? Not the
zone. You know, it was sort of much vaulted. Oh, now we can be, you know, clear of cloud and in sight of the surface again. But we're sort of operating. So yes, that implies to the CTR, the control zone. But then we've got a whole set of different rules for the ATZ. So it's actually sort of made it a little bit more complicated, in my opinion. But hey, there we go.
It has. It does seem to have settled down a bit now, though.
Yeah, kind of got the hang of it.
Yeah.
It'll change now you've said that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we've got this stuff, so now someone will have to change all of the rules.
So how is sorry, I'm asking all the questions at the moment. I do apologize. How is, whilst I've got you both, it's great. It's only then normally get to speak to you one at a time. Okay. Breaking all the rules, chatting away occasionally. No, we don't really, but how is that? I mean, we've left the ARSA now for nearly a year, yet it still seems to be referenced almost everywhere in our documentation, our rules and regulations. How's that affecting you both with your workplace?
Not too significantly. I mean, obviously, the cut and paste machine was working overtime because I think they've basically just taken all the rules we were using before and just, you know, cut and paste them into the ANO, I suppose they are recorded in. I don't think any of our stuff has actually changed. I'm trying to think, because I think, again, all the ATC stuff was pretty much we'll just carry on doing what we're doing kind of thing.
What about,
I can't think of anything that's changed. Can you, Amanda, for us as actual?
I don't know what happened yesterday. You know, when you've had such a lull in the traffic, there's so many things drop in, but you haven't used them. So when you do go back to it, I can't think of anything that's changed. There's going to be something really glaring now, isn't there?
Apart from that, you know, much vaulted, we can now be clear of cloud in sight of the surface in a control zone, but we've actually complicated by doing two different things in sort of 20 miles of airspace. Okay. I mean, in fact, it's even worse on Special VFR, because on the heli route, so let's say you're going H9, H10, H4, so you could be
back to my screen.
VFR into the zone.
In London, yeah.
Depending on the weather, you'd have to go through Northolt's ATZ Special VFR.
Yeah.
And then you could be VFR back when you're on H10 until you get to Hanger Lane.
Oh God!
And then you might have to be Special VFR going through Battersea's ATZ.
Yeah, round there.
So, and then, you know, and then off out the other side, VFR again. I haven't faced this situation yet, and I can't even begin to imagine how I would actually describe it to the pilot.
So you're
Right,
saying
you're cleared
you have to be special.
H9, H10, VFR, except for Northolt and Battersea ATZ, where you're going to be special. I'm looking forward to the winter.
That's quite a lot to remember as the pilot to read back.
Yeah.
And
It
then,
is, and that's it. You know, it's how we're going to make it simple and, you know, understandable that, you know, because you only need 1 kilometre on the heli routes, don't you? So
it's pretty low, yeah.
Yeah, so it could be, and yet it would be 5 kilometres going through through each of those ATZs. So it, like I say, I don't know. I'll worry about that when I have to do it.
I'll wait till you're on, and I'll pick a bit of a grotty day.
Yeah, we're going. I can see this happening now. Yeah.
We'll try it. Send me a text message when you know the weather's really bad.
That's it. So let's do it now.
Now. Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this before. Just to go over it again, because we do want our students and our pilots to be very happy and confident requesting a zone transit, not to be feared. It's nothing difficult, not complicated. It's fairly straightforward. But there's always that, especially the first time you do it, you see the poor student. So today we're going to go and do a zone transit through Luton, and the whites of their eyes appear because they kind of know what that involves a little bit. Oh my God, what, through the airspace? Yeah, we're going to go through. And we'll go right near the runways where we're not allowed to go over it anymore. Actually, there's a good question. Are we allowed to go over it, or?
If nothing's happening, we can, you know, if it's quiet, it's not, basically what we're trying to do is, obviously if you go towards the landing threshold, anything taking off is going to be at its lowest point, i.e. pretty much on the ground, or and it also means that it's kind of a better option if something has to make a missed approach. We don't really play things that close anymore, though. But it's kind of the best place to transit. But there's nothing if there's nothing going on, and we've spoken to the tower and said we would put on what's called just a check with them. So under normal circumstances, the tower can just release their departures without talking to us. But if we put a check on, and that can be for everything or for particular departure tracks, they have to talk to us before anything takes off. So if I can assure nothing's going to surprise me and leap into the air all of a sudden, then there's nothing to stop you going straight through the overhead.
Because it's really rare on the radio now. It's always via the threshold, and I get asked this question quite a lot, and I keep harping back, thinking I kind of vaguely remember since 9/11. After that, all the major airports got a bit twitchy about us flying over the runways, and it was always remain clear of the threshold no matter what, and it gave the impression that that's it. You cannot possibly go through the overhead anymore.
No, well, it's been quiet. I've had things going through the overhead all the time, so I hope it's not. I hope it's not. You know, there's nothing. If there's no traffic reason to prevent it, it's really just to make sure that any departures, you know, it's a way where we don't have to put any restrictions on the tower. They can just carry on, and we know you're not going to be anywhere near their the departure track.
So if we put a request in via the overhead, it's just a bit of a pain up the backside because it means an extra phone call for you or something just to check that that's going to be okay. Whereas if you get the threshold, it's easy and more sensible. I understand that.
Yeah.
Anything that transits, we have to ring the tower. So north of Luton, 4670 is Augusta 109. Transit by the 25 threshold, and we have to go not above 2,400 feet VFR. I will keep and I will call traffic. So anything going through the ATZ, we have to let the tower know.
Oh, really? Every time?
Yeah. So
a phone call.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
When you call for transit and say, I've had stuff right on the zone boundary, can I come in? Well, you've left that a bit late. Squawk, clearance, hold, inbound traffic, tower, he's transiting, right. EasyJet 6 mile final, can you see it, yes or no? No, you can't. Right, hold position, hold at hide. EasyJet, VFR traffic to pass behind you, left to right via the 25 threshold. Roger. And then you're waiting for the VFR. Can you see the EasyJet? Yes or no? Yes. Now clear transit by the 25 threshold behind that landing traffic. Keep the runway on your left-hand side, and it can all go off so quickly. And the tower needs to know, inbound traffic needs to know. And when you've got on a busy summer's day, you've got 2 or 3 wanting transit, you need to ring the tower about everybody, tell everybody about everybody else, the amount of traffic you have to pass. It's just incredible.
See, that's what I love about it. It's every day is a school day, isn't it? I didn't realise every single time you have to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
The trouble is, you make
a button. It's, you know, we've got, you know, but yes, we have to notify anything going within 3 miles of the airport. I think they want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not.
You do too good a job of it. You just make that seem so seamless. Like I say, even I didn't realise you have to do that every time. So I do apologise if I've requested that a little bit late. About.
Well, that's why we kind of asked for, you know, a little bit of notice. Obviously, it gives us time to plan and make all the coordination calls that we have to do. That's
pretty good going. I mean, I've requested clear, you know, zone transit quite close to the zone, and you managed to get back in time. But does that mean you're letting me in, but then quickly doing
letting you in and then doing the coordination?
On the phone to the tower just as we finish the clearance to you. That's
the truth's out. There we go. See, I was thinking, how have you managed to do that all that short space of time?
And it sort of comes back to what you touched on. I know, Paul, you know, you listen out on a frequency and nothing's going on. But I would say, I mean, a lot of our coordination now is electronic with our magic news strips, so that's sort of taken away some phone calls. But before that, and other units that are still doing everything with sort of paper and pen and steam power and all this sort of thing. A good 50% of your workload is actually telling other people what you're doing or what something else's intentions are. So while the frequency itself might be quite quiet, it's like we're like swans, you know. It's sort of, you know, it might seem nice and genteel, but underneath the legs are going.
It's so true, though. It's so like the IFR traffic. Love it. Sort of station calling. I was on the phone. Oh, we're on the phone. We're on the landline.
Yeah, it makes it sound like I was just calling my mum. Yeah.
Doing the Sainsbury's shop. No, it's not like that.
So this mystery about zone transits, they are quite straightforward, aren't they?
Terribly.
You don't need to know the life story. You only need to really know some of the basics. And I've said this before, and you know, Helena is the one that taught me ADDPAR and made it very nice and simple. And that's what I still teach today.
Good. Yeah.
Nice.
It still works. You know, that's exactly what we need to know. Like you say, aircraft call sign and type. So as a controller, and particularly it possibly applies more to sort of Thames and Special, because the airspace has lots of different bits where twins can do things and singles can't, and fixed wing can do things, or fixed wing can't and helicopters can, you know. So we're already getting an idea, and like I say, especially on Heathrow radar, we're already getting an idea of what you're going to want to do. Maybe what you're not going to be able to do. If you ask me to do that, please don't, you know. Where you're coming from, and two, again, we've got an idea of how you're going to affect our little world. If you're coming from, you know, most of our colleagues, you know, our geography is not, you know, spot on, but most of them will know that Newcastle is somewhere up north and Bournemouth is somewhere near us down here on the south coast. So we get an idea of how you're going to affect our little piece of the universe. Position obviously helps us locate you until we've got the squawk. Altitude, because we will be tying up and what we call verifying. If you tell me you're at 2,000 feet and my radar shows that you're at 2,000 feet, we treat that information as good. And if it's out of tolerance by 200 feet, then we would have to go through, make sure you got the correct pressure setting. But basically, it's all part of making sure that what I'm looking at on the radar ties up with what you've told me. And then obviously your request, give us a brief idea in your, I see it's in your little RT thing you sent, man. Give us a brief idea in your initial call, but then you can expand upon, and you've been invited to pass your message, you can expand upon what you actually want to do. So in essence, it's no different to any other establishing communication, passing your details. That's all the same. And obviously in that you would ask for a zone transit. What I've always won't even go down that route. I say, as the luxury of fixed wing is you've always got a free hand that you can make notes with. So, but you be prepared, because whenever you're given a clearance, it will have the magic words cleared to. I use transit. Some people say cross, means the same thing. It will always include the flight rules, as we've sort of touched on before, the flight rules that you're going to go through under. So you can be ready to come back with that. It will include a level restriction, so a not above, and it might include a routing. So the sort of the road that ATC are going down is to use VRPs as much as we can. So if there's a VRP on your route, you can pretty much expect to go there first. So
if we're requesting a zone transit and there isn't a VRP, what's the best way of describing the route that we want to take? Is it with just ground features or
yeah, towns?
Towns,
you know,
okay.
I want to go between Luton Airport and Hitchin, you know, and then I'd know, you know, that's pretty much where the beacon formerly known as the LUT used to be. You know, it's yeah, I want to pass 4 miles east of the airfield. Magic.
Okay,
If
yeah.
it's 4 miles, you don't have to tell the tower.
Yeah, Adam, it's always that just get the basics out, because
yeah,
any air traffic control, if they haven't understood, they'll always come back and ask for a bit more detail.
Yeah.
We've always tried to be mindful of not to waffle and give your life story and when we're pressing the transmit button for 30 seconds, where of course it could be quite important.
Yeah.
Somebody else is trying to transmit.
I always find Suffolk a bit of a blessing and a curse for the training, because we've got a nice bit of controlled airspace up at Norwich, but you know, you have to go quite a way to get into anything a bit more complicated, and I think that's definitely reflected in my training in terms of when it comes to radio stuff. But
You must be good at maths though, with Lakenheath and Milton Corner.
yeah. No, my nav was good actually.
Yeah. Oh, we need to Adam, congratulations by the way for passing recently.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Well done.
Congrats.
Got a
Thank you.
thing, we've got a thing that oh.
Yeah, well done. Very
Thank
well
you.
done. Because you do sometimes hear on the radio where some poor soul is trying to do this zone transit, if you will, by the book, and when they get to that R part, the routing part of it, kind of thing. Oh my God, I've heard some of the routes that they give across to you. Every single little turning point of this 100 nautical mile navigation they're planning to do, with which you're only, you know, 20 miles of it.
Yes, you know, it's and bear in mind the controller's looking about, you know, 30 miles from, I know we're not actually sitting there, but from nominally where we are sitting, say 30 miles around Luton. Anything else, you know, here be dragons. So not worry about that.
Tigers and bears, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. No, I've had that, you know, people calling up, particularly on Thames, and I have one chap, and he was routing Brookman's Park, Lambourne. Okay, fairly interested. Detling, yeah, okay, still interested. Dover, Coppshader, off into Holland. That's losing interest now. Yeah,
yeah, completely.
Yeah, so you know, give us points that, and our geography in our area of responsibility is pretty good. So give us points within that, and outside that, where, you know, off to the southwest is good enough, you know, or something. Something suitably vague that won't trouble our little brains too much.
And when we're spitting out our initial contact, you know, partial message, Is it helpful for when the pilot sort of says, and the aircraft type is, and then they say the aircraft type, and they sort of, my departure is, my destination is, my position
no,
is,
so you're making my
altitude
toes curl
is.
up now. This is, I know, you know, no, I mean, and it's not just, I have a student air traffic controller at the moment. You are cleared to cross. No, just cleared, cross. If that's what you're going to say, you know. So it's all that, you know, it's just sort of time. I think he's just given himself thinking time.
Yeah.
So it works both ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, we appreciate that. But if you can sort of cut out the, you know, this is golf. What's yes? Okay. I'm at. Okay.
Because we try to explain on the radio, of course, and we've done this on the basic level, that for the most part, only one person can talk at a time. And if everybody says in an entire day just one extra word in their transmission from both sides, oh my God, the number of extra words that's spoken in an entire day is huge, isn't it?
And okay, at the moment, it's not, you know, the RT demand isn't too big, but if you know, think back to the way it was in sort of the summer of 2019, RT time was really of a premium, and you know, if you weren't snappy, stuff didn't get done, you know. So it's and that's the point of the standard, you know, phrases. Rather than saying I would like to, you know, come to your airport, we just say we press join, you know. So it's all nice and short, and everyone knows what it means.
When teaching to people, you have to say it does sound slightly rude, because there's no pleases, there's no thank yous, there's no this is or I am or hello and goodbyes. It's just fairly succinct, isn't it, to the point.
Absolutely.
Unless you're talking to me.
Relatively monotone, just across, yeah.
And it's all like I say, you can, you may, just no.
I was the opposite when I was training. It was no pleases, thank nothing. Then when I validated, the Stansted crew sort of managed to crack through my shell, and it made me laugh, and that was it. It's been fluff ever since.
And then I have the other end of the scale, where you have the very astute student is trying to do it absolutely by the book and sounds quite, you know, cross on the radio, and I'm thinking, whoa, look, I know this is not the right thing. They're really quiet. They're actually really quite friendly. You don't have to sound quite so officious on the radio.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a sort of a nice balance where you can be busy, correct RT, but not sound like you're just really peed off with the world and everyone in it.
Oh, sorry, Chris is waving his hand. Yes, sir.
Could I just make a very simple request? Sometimes I call up and I ask for whatever the services I require, and then just comes out like a machine gun. And there's no way that my feeble brain can take it all in and then repeat it back properly, let alone understand what's going on. And it seems to me that they take a deep breath, let the breath out, and everything comes out splat. Please, can you go a bit more slowly?
Yeah, and our trouble is we will say the same thing over and over again. So it becomes, you know, yes, the identifies basic service QNH 102. I used to work with a chap at Luton, and the busier he got, the faster he spoke, and the more people said say again because they missed things because he was speaking so quickly, and so he would say it again even faster because he was now even busier, and it was just this sort of spiral into madness of say again, and him getting more and more cross.
I used to be like that. Yeah, I was pulled up on that because we have tape checks done every year, and I was pulled up on that about 2005. It's a mandate. You need to slow down. The busier you get, the quicker you speak. The quicker you speak, the less they understand. So I now know when I'm getting busy, I'll sit back from the radar. I think right, and I will slow it right down, because otherwise nobody understands what I'm saying.
And I think one thing sort of culturally that has changed in ATC over the last few years is we will split the sector far more quickly.
Yeah.
and give ourselves more RT time. So, you know, rather than having to speak quickly and deal with everyone quickly, we'll divide the task between 2 or more of us, and everyone's got that much time. It's also much more relaxed.
Helena, when you say split the sector, you better just explain.
Okay, yeah. So, for example, Thames is probably my best example. At the moment, because it's quiet, or let's say sort of first thing in the morning, one person will be working all 3 Thames frequencies and Heathrow radar. So if you call us up, and we're sometimes a little bit schizophrenic and sometimes calling ourselves Thames radar and sometimes calling ourselves Heathrow radar, that's why, because we're working all the frequencies and we're looking at all the airspace from the Heathrow radar out to the East Coast. So it's nice and quiet, and that is a perfectly manageable task for one person. So as I say, the morning's probably the best way to describe it. Then Biggin and London City wake up, and they might have some traffic, and Battersea arrive and tell us, oh, well, they've got, you know, these expected in the next hour. And I think, oh, I don't really want to be doing with all this traffic out over the East Coast, you know, with the hold up there and the transition and sort of to the south of Southend and all that, and be looking for someone in the Heathrow zone. So I will call my colleague and say, right, you can take Heathrow Special and that frequency, and you can deal with all that, and it won't worry me. So we've now got 2 people doing it. In our heyday, when it got busier and busier, Thames itself would divide into someone looking at the outer holds, so out near, sort of out on the coast near Dover and the marshier parts of Essex. And then someone would have another person working the transition, where they come down to the south of Southend, because we'd be working the Southend departures through that traffic and the Biggin Hill stuff feeding through as well, the Biggin Hill departures. So we'd have another person doing that, and then we'd finally have one person who's our FIN, our final director, who's actually doing the final vectoring onto the approaches for the relevant airfield. So it all depends on the workload. You could have one person doing it, or you could have 4 people. So, and it's, again, for people learning the task, it's a judgment call. Am I going to be busy enough that this is going to start being a problem, and having the appreciation that not now, but in 5 minutes, which is how long it will take to call someone from the canteen or the find wherever they've gone and hidden themselves, to come in, take the handover, set up the radars and the frequencies and everything. And then normally at the end of the evening, when it all dies off, it all concertinas back into one person doing the whole lot again. So, and I think for you guys, Luton, we're having a very exciting airspace change coming up early next year.
Oh yeah.
Won't affect the low level stuff, but we will now be working a hold up near Grafham Waterway. So we will have our own hold. So rather than everything bundling through Stansted, it's going to take a much more northerly route up to the Luton hold. And then it has to fly quite a convoluted S shape to keep up with the Stansted traffic, just so that we can make our descent levels. But what it will mean, I think, in practice, is that the Luton task will be split more often. So we'll be using 128.75 more frequently. More likely that they will be the ones you will contact for a zone transit. But obviously, it's kind of not till February next year, but so certainly for the next sort of the next big flying season, then that's very likely to keep an eye on the NOTAMs for something that might have changed in terms of who you will contact when you want to speak to Luton and get through.
So does that mean you're going to get a new bit of airspace up there somewhere?
We have. Well, yeah, sort of. We've got a little bit of new airspace. It's high level stuff, and we've stolen some from our colleagues that were working sort of Midlands and Daventry, that kind of area. So in essence, like I say, if you imagine sort of where Grafham Water is, instead of our traffic sort of piling in across Stansted or downwind right, it's all going to be pointed up towards Grafham Water from where it will take a slightly circuitous route. But because the descents and the turns are quite critical, I think the actual sector will be split a lot more once this comes into operation. Yeah,
that makes it interesting.
Because at the moment, Luton is really never, very rarely do we actually split the task. We've got the capacity to do it, to make what we would call an intermediate director doing the initial vectoring, and then a final director doing the spacing. But it's only really of use if Luton are on 07, as I actually find it's more work trying to explain to someone what you're doing on 25. So it really defeats the object. And it's rarely sort of that super busy that we would need to do it. But I think the way the task is being set up, it might be a bit much to ask someone to sort of deal with zone transit and run a hold up near Grafham. I think it might be even a bit further north than that, but run a hold and a sequence all the way down from there.
So for us VFRs, that doesn't really affect us other than
no, apart from, like I say, you might have to call a different frequency, so keep an eye on the NOTAMs. That would be my top tip for next year.
Now, one I'm guessing that quite a few people tonight will realise, but Amanda, Helena, when you're operating Luton Stansted, you're not actually there, are you?
No.
Whereabouts are you?
We're down in Southampton.
I mean, miles away.
Yeah. Funny, we're on the Costa del Solent, aren't we?
Yeah. And even now, when I fly through, say, especially Luton, because we do that more often than not, I still can't, for a split second, imagine you sitting up the tower. When I'm talking to you, it's almost like you're sitting up the tower and have to remember, no, you're way back down there somewhere on the south coast. Yeah.
It did, when we first moved down here, it did take, I don't know about you, but it took me a couple of weeks because, you're used to talking about, stuff happening around London or Luton or, you go, oh, nowhere near that anymore because, previously I'd either been at Luton or at Heathrow or at West Drayton, which is where the centre moved down from before. And then you suddenly realise, oh no, I'm quite a long way away from all that.
It always used to be driving into West Drayton. I do miss West Drayton. I will say that. It's not something I never thought I'd say, but I miss West Drayton because at least you could see which way Heathrow were landing, which would give
I did. On the M25, yeah. East of this today.
And also, if something went around, you heard it, and the building would almost shake. Brilliant. You'd run out the fire escape to see who'd gone around at Heathrow, and you could actually see stuff. You felt a little bit more with it.
Yeah, a bit more
down here. You won't get
you must feel slightly disconnected.
I did you were saying about that. I did a Met Observer certificate when I first started at Luton Airport, and they did a week at Shinfield Park where the Met Office used to have their college, which was lovely. It was like all silver service and all this sort of thing. They looked after them very well. And then you did a week sort of out at an airport, and I got Heathrow. They used to have a little porter cabin north of 27 right or 09 left, depending which way you're going. And obviously quite a while ago. And whenever a Concorde went off, the whole building used to vibrate. Your coffee cup would just bounce across the table. You were like, come back. It was, it was all very, because you're only sort of, a few hundred meters inside of the runway. It was something noisy.
I do miss it. You do feel very detached being where we are.
Everyone's just a little green dot to us, you see.
The green wormy things. You'll just go at different speeds. 747 gyrocopter.
My nephew plays for the Luton Town Academy, and they were playing in QPR near Hounslow the other weekend, and I went to cheer, and basically it was sort of just off the end of Heathrow's runway where their football ground was. So I spent most of the time going, oh, Qatar, they got across the plains. I did see the goal he scored. Promise.
Now, does anybody, apart from Jane and Amanda, does anybody want to tell me where the City Airport Tower is?
Yeah, good question.
Is it north of the runway, south of the runway, east of the runway, or west of the runway?
South.
Anybody else want to have a guess?
That is an accurate answer.
I was going to say, Jonathan, well done. That is very true. It is south of the runway, but how much south of the runway?
About 70 miles.
Yeah.
I was going to say opposite the ladies' toilets.
So when I first discovered
I
this
wouldn't know
fact
about
that there is no control tower at City Airport, it's all done by cameras. I was astonished.
Don't know. I did have a. It might still be on my phone. I did have a picture of their. It's quite fancy in there.
Have you been in there?
I did when they were setting it up. We're not allowed COVID-wise to mix, even though you know. Anyway, but the cameras now sort of show them. It's sort of 360 degrees, but in 270. So it's a little bit weird.
Oh, okay. A panoramic photo.
That's it, because there's sort of a boat will disappear going up the river there, and then it'll be over there. So I'm sure it's taken them a little while to get used to it, but
they're not in your they're not in your building, are they?
Yeah, at the end of the corridor opposite the ladies'
corridor opposite the ladies'.
Oh, they are literally in the corridor.
But I think in actual fact it is better than reality, because you can put the radar data block actually onto the screen. So instead of just, as I was describing earlier, looking for your special VFR transit, instead of doing that, you would have the data block attached that would move with the target. I mean, it's brilliant, and do picture in picture. So instead of going, oh, has that one started, and now I'm just trying to peer over the desk, you can just have the picture in picture. So it's I think, like I say, better than reality.
It's quite clever.
Is there anybody actually manning the tower at Luton or Stansted?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're still there.
Jonathan, look behind me. I'm up the Luton Tower right now.
I thought you might be. Yeah, that's
the airfield's floodlit. That's why it does. That's why there's daylight.
This explains everything.
Oh, just a quick personal question: is Adrian still at Luton? Has he moved?
Yes. Yeah, I spoke to him the other morning.
But I haven't spoken to him for ages. So
no, I hadn't, and then suddenly I sort of went in for a morning. It was my last morning spin. And, hello, Helena. Yeah, hi. I've just woken up. Leave me be. I can't find it. It must still be on my phone, but it's quite the city remote tower is quite. Cranfield have a remote tower as well, don't they? It's down in the old Capt building.
No, is it really?
Yeah, they've got a digital. They were actually the first to get the digital tower.
The Cranfield Tower is
just downstairs from the real one, so it's not 70 miles away. I think we are.
I didn't know that. I haven't been to Cranfield for a long time, Helena.
No, neither have I. But,
Can I ask another question? Which is, when you are going in for a shift during the day and it's a really nice day, do you approach the shift with a sense of dread?
I guess it's part of our own sort of threat and error management. You sort of know it's a nice day, it's a weekend, it's a bank holiday, okay, and you're kind of as you're driving in, like Amanda was saying, you know, we can't assess the runway directions anymore and think, oh God, it's easterlies, but we know, there's going to be the likelihood that there's going to be a lot of VFR traffic. It's a weekend, nice day, yada yada. The IFR wise, you know, it would be the reverse. Oh God, it's a horrible day. It's foggy on the way in. I wonder if it's foggy up at Luton, and we're going to be in LVPs, and you know, so you are kind of, I guess, preparing yourself as you're driving, and then if these things don't come to pass, you think, oh well, there we go, I was wrong.
But I thought if it was a miserable day, especially if it was foggy, you probably wouldn't see much general aviation traffic.
No, exactly. That puts a whole, like I say, it's a whole different set of issues in that the airports are likely to be in low visibility procedures, which means they want us to provide them with very large gaps in between arrivals, which means we're likely to run out of airspace. You know, keep weaving things backwards and forwards to try and drag out another couple of miles and all this sort of thing. Yeah. So that, like I say, it's I was just thinking, what would my perfect day be? I don't know.
That would be it.
No clue. There we go.
A completely fogged down day. There we are. No.
Yeah.
Quick question is, when I was training, I wanted to listen to live ATC, but obviously in this country you can't do it. Is that's down to licensing, or is it down to
the
laws?
Wireless Telegraphy Act that kind of says you're not meant to do it, but it doesn't stop people having airbound.
No, obviously, yeah, you could have an airband scanner, but just
Perfect.
to be able to just sit there and listen to an airport that's miles away from you, I think would just be really useful.
The Americans put it on the internet, don't they?
Yeah, liveatc.net or whatever.
Yeah,
you can just sit there and just listen all day. I think it'd be a great training.
Just part of our legislation that's always sort of not really allowed for that to happen.
Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah, it is.
I think when I sat, there was liveatc.net, but I've had a lot of snippets on YouTube of American ATC sequences where
some of them are quite amusing.
Stupid,
yeah, so you just find
I think you can still hear on Live ATC Dublin.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I was training, listening to.
Ah, that explains the Irish accent Valley puts on.
No, I didn't know you could listen to the Irish ones as well.
No, me neither.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's just one of our peculiarities that we're not.
Have any of you come across Wilco Radio yet? It's a fairly new online tool for radio training. I think they've only been going probably 6 months, but that I had a quick go at that, and that it was all right, but they haven't quite got the voices and stuff down yet. It's very robotic. But yeah, no, that was a good tool that came about when I was just about ready to do my RT test.
You want to keep your eyes posted for an app that's coming out soon. But I think the voices are pretty good. They're just the ones that are in the Apple thing.
Oh, cool. Okay.
This is a question. I won't take anybody time up to it, but this is a question that often crops up. I had something.
I don't know what we're calling it yet. Yeah.
How do you learn to use the radio? And I said, look, there's many different methods, but there's no substitute for just having a go. You've got to understand the basic structure of how you use the radio, the sort of typical wordings we use, and you make a call, they make a call, and you probably reply to it, and then they might make another call and you reply back. But it's just a conversation.
It is difficult. It's a bit like learning a language.
Yeah,
you've got to learn a bit of vocab, and then it's just and everyone knows it's, we've all been there. It's horrible pushing the transmit switch because you think the whole world's listening to you. They're really not.
And the whole world's going to judge you for it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We're not sitting there going judging. It's we don't, in the grand scheme, we don't normally have time to sort of, to do that.
Because and
we appreciate that people are learning as well.
We've all been there, and we've all put our foot on the switch and said something totally random, thinking, I wish the world would swallow me up, but of course you're the ATC unit. You're not going anywhere. At least as a pilot, you can switch voices.
Yeah, and you're off the frequency in 10 minutes. We're there all day.
Yeah. Not living that one down.
When I teach, I've always just said, I try to get people on the radio in almost the second or third lesson, and just even if you just squeeze the trigger and say, for instance, for us, Elstree information, the helicopter call sign, and request radio check and airfield information. Just start, have a go, and make sure you just understand it's only a person on the other end of the radio you're talking to, and it's just a conversation you have. It's a fairly formal one, but that's the bare basics behind it.
It was quite interesting when I sort of was doing a lot of instructing. I was out of Luton with the Britannia Flying Club, and then I was also teaching at Falmere with Modern Air, who were just like so I was going from Luton, where obviously very rigid. We need clearances to move everywhere. We need zone clearances in and out and all this sort of thing. And then little grass strip where the only operator is air ground. And it was quite interesting to see how people, in some ways, having to deal with the high intensity RT sort of slowed their flying progress down a little bit. And But then it was in the day when we could bring, you know, like aircraft, and I would sort of bring the guys from Falmere in to just have a landing at Luton sort of thing, and they would, you know, so it's good to sort of chip away at it from the very beginning, and somewhere, and where you guys are at Elstree is a good happy medium, sort of quite literally with the FISO thing, because it's, you know, you've got some RT discipline to deal with and all that sort of thing, but then it's also quite relaxed as well.
Can drop down to Elstree radio sometimes.
That's right. Yeah.
Slightly more of a free for all, but
I've been Luton radio before now. I thought, you're on radio, brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
I've had someone request radio control, which I thought would be the perfect solution, because I could just sit there and they would go exactly where I wanted them to go.
I visited Duxford a few years ago for the DAX over Duxford. I was in the tower, and I've never visited a tower because, of course, it's a FISO, and I'm thinking, you're not clearing stuff to land. And my little mind was blown because I am so used to, you're going to do this. No, you will do that. And I will always give instructions. I couldn't not. So it was what they were doing. I thought, no. It just,
I do the air ground across the road here. I'm just opposite a little grass strip.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's so much more difficult suggesting that people park. Go and park over there. You know, you've got
to be very careful with the choice of words.
On the South Apron, you know, all this sort of thing. It's a lot easier just to tell people what to do.
Yeah, turn left, turn right, report established, contact tower. Yeah,
correct. Up, down, left, right.
That's the traffic.
I will. I'll come to an end for tonight, because I mean, I'll sit here and talk to you for another, well, several hours quite happily, no problems at all. Because it's so interesting in talking to both Helena and Amanda and their insight, and if nothing else, just to see that you're actual people as well. You're real. That's it.
Even though they hide us away.
I know, they tuck you away in a room miles away from us. When we talk to you on the radio, sometimes you're crystal clear, and it's as if you're, you know, virtually sitting in the aircraft with us.
And sometimes we've got to sound like I've got our head in a bucket. Yeah.
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah, the Luton radio is a bit crackly.
As it's moments,
So I think the transmitters are still at Luton for that, and they put them in a place where that isn't ideal.
Oh, sometimes it's terrible. It's appalling, especially out to the west.
That's always been bad.
The low-level RT coverage out there is quite poor. I keep losing the policeman to Benson. He knows to disappear quite soon. I'll always lose him around sort of inland Tring. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you, probably from on behalf of everybody, for joining us once again tonight, because it's not the first time you've joined us, and hopefully won't be the last time.
No, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just a reminder for everybody that's here at the moment, next one, we're lucky to have Catherine's uncle join us again, Rich Luck, who will be able to regale us with all his stories, not necessarily all the top secret stuff, but of his time in the and he's still out there, still in the RAF at the moment as flight lieutenant. So that'll be a good one, a couple of weeks' time to join in on.
Oh, we might gate crash Amanda.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
we're missing out on things here.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So I'll send you the. I'll make sure you're on the ground school invite list, Helena, so you can always join in any time. But thank you. It's very kind of you.
No, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
No,